Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Thanks for joining me today for a live talk on the negativity bias and what we can do about it. So hello to Maria from Las Vegas and Julia, south of England, and Milind, I hope I'm saying that right, from Mumbai, India. We are already starting with a broad international group, and I am in Connecticut. That's where I live and work. And so welcome everybody. So for those of you who are watching on the replay, I will check out your comments. You can still leave comments below as we're going through and discussing things or any questions you might have. I do try to go back and look at them. And most people who are watching know me, the people watching live, but my name is Barbara Heffernan, and I am a psychotherapist and life coach and Buddhist, and I bring all sorts of things together to try to help people live a more joyful life. So if you're watching on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel and give the video a like if you like it. That's a big help. So let's talk. Today we're going to talk about the negativity bias, and I'm going to give you 3 things that you can do to try to reframe your focus to more positive things. So Facebook users, hello. Janet is in the UK. Jessica, India, I'm seeing Dr. Shri and Joanne. So nice to see everybody. So let me know, you can send me a thumbs up if you have already heard of the negativity bias and have already begun trying to work with it. But I will give a little bit of background on the negativity bias for those people who have not, who don't know what it is. And I'll look for your thumbs up. And the negativity bias is incredibly well researched. It has been researched now, it's being researched a lot these last few years, and it has been researched from the point of view of really sociological studies, kind of how do people behave studies. It's being researched in terms of what goes on in the brain. People are looking at the negativity bias in terms of the evolution of life, really, not just humans, but also other mammals. And the negativity bias has been very well proven in both mammals and humans. So what is it? The negativity bias basically means we pay more attention to negative information than we do to positive information. When we have a negative experience, it is embedded more deeply into our memory, and it is also harder to extinguish. So with learning and behavioral techniques to try to help people learn things, we look at negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement. With negative reinforcement, people learn much faster, but it also gets deeply embedded and it's incredibly hard to extinguish. So hopefully that language makes sense to you. But negative reinforcement is harder to extinguish, which basically means it's harder to unlearn. So once you've learned something, and I'll give a bunch of examples here, it's hard to unlearn it without considerable effort. So let's talk about why the negativity bias developed in mammals and humans. So let's go back to the days of the cavemen. You're in your cozy cave and you're hungry. So you're going to go out and you're going to go search for some berries or something to eat. So you are positively motivated and you leave your cave, and then you hear a very loud rustling in the bushes, which signals danger. You will run back to your cave, right? Because the threat of the danger is way greater than the reward of the berries. Now, obviously, there may be a point at which that balance shifts, but it would have to get very negative before that balance shifts. So the negativity bias is really a survival mechanism. It is a mechanism that our brains developed to keep us safe. And in the days when we lived in a world where we had a lot of physical threats, and I know there are some people who do live in areas around the world right now where they are under a lot of physical threat as well. Or if you're growing up in a violent home, clearly the threat of violence is there. For many of us, though, we are living in homes where we don't have a threat of violence, We are in a society where there's not too much physical violence, or at least none targeted directly at us. And yet we still will be reacting with this negativity bias to all sorts of situations that don't warrant it. So another example that I like to go back to from caveman days is if you hear that rustling in the bush and you run back to your cave and then you wait a little bit longer, but you're getting really, really hungry, you probably will form a group, and you will probably go out in a group to search out food, to try to kill a wild animal, to do what you need to do to survive. So that group is critically important to your survival. And then on the other hand, so you might, in the olden days, right, you'd have the men going off for the hunting perhaps, and the women at home taking care of the children. But those women had to stay bonded in a group as well to protect from threats of animals coming into their little camp area, or roaming tribes that might come in and hurt them. So the social bonding was survival based, was critically based. And I feel that we experience social rejection on that level, even when that's no longer true. So this is particularly true in sort of those middle school years, right? Middle school years are years where your main focus has been your family. And then you get a little bit older and you're in middle school, and all of a sudden your focus becomes your peers, and you're insecure. You don't really know how to interact with the peers. They're very, very important to you, but there is a constant hypervigilance around, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? So that would be kind of that typical middle school age. And I feel like that is a very primal survival response to social groups. And a lot of people develop social anxiety at that time, which never goes away, or doesn't go away until they receive treatment for it. So let me know if any of this is sort of resonating for you. Because with social environments, once we're adults, if we go into a situation and people aren't very friendly to us, generally it's not life-threatening. And again, I know there are exceptions to this, but generally it's not. And we can find other social groups where we can belong, and we don't need to belong to every social group, so we can pick and choose. So there's really no survival basis for the problem now, but our brains and our negativity bias has learned from old information, as well as sort of instinctual habits, to be focusing on the negative. So let me know if we're making sense here. I'm getting one yes. Getting one yes. Okay, terrific, terrific. So this negativity bias, what it does to us and how it limits our enjoyment is that we end up focusing always on the negative. And some people feel like they do this an excessive amount and they feel like there's something wrong with them. And I just would like to communicate that, unfortunately, this is sort of normal. This is normal how our brain works, until we become deeply aware of it and then try to reframe. So let's talk about how we do that. So an example of a negativity bias might be that probably everybody is familiar with. You might have a review at work, and overall your boss says all sorts of good things and is very happy with everything, and then maybe makes 2 criticisms. What goes through your head that night? What's going to go around and around and around in your head? The good stuff or the bad stuff? And the good stuff could be like, there could have been 10, 12, 15 things. Overall, very positive review, even a positive, grade at the end. But those 2 criticisms are going to stick in there. And depending on our personality, we'll go around and around. It might be like anger at the boss for saying that, or it might be kind of self-loathing, or it could just be trying to figure it out, I don't understand, or whatever it is, our minds will go around and around and around on the negative stuff. So that is a sign of the negativity bias. Yep, obsess on the negative. Yep. Great example, been through this. Yes, this is very, very relatable. For most people, we remember insults or criticisms, and we heavily weight them, and we barely remember compliments or the good things. Same thing in terms of like our experiences. You have a day and probably you've had a lot of pleasurable experiences. We don't even notice them anymore. Once they become normal, I know I use the example of like taking a shower. Taking a shower is a really pleasurable experience. If you have running water or hot water, it's really nice. We don't really notice it until we don't have it one day. So we go through all these fairly pleasurable experiences. Eating on a regular basis, pleasurable experience. We don't think much about it. Something negative happens, we obsess on it. So that's the problem. Let's talk about the solutions. Ruminating, someone's asking, does it include ruminating? Sure. I mean, that is sort of ruminating, right? To be at the end of the day going over and over, what is the problem? You could call it obsessive thinking, you could call it ruminating, but your brain is basically trying to protect you from threats that don't exist anymore. So I talked about this last week, and really over the last few weeks, I've been talking about this a lot, but the last live I did, which I can link here for future YouTube videos, viewers, and that made me lose my train of thought. But in any case, yes, it includes ruminating. Oh, your brain trying to protect you, sorry. So your brain is trying to protect you from threats that don't exist anymore. The threat does not exist anymore. So when in particular we have a lot of difficult experiences in childhood, say, those experiences get ingrained very, very deeply, possibly in both implicit and explicit memory. So explicit memory is like this frontal lobe stuff. You remember all of it. You can remember the story. Implicit memory are more those automatic reactions. So it could be a smell that brings you a feeling of anxiety, or it could be a pattern of relationship, or it could just be like being in a restaurant and hearing two people argue at the nearby table might make you feel nervous, even though you don't know them. You don't need to know them. You don't have anything to do with them. But there's an implicit memory of the fear of listening to people argue. So that kind of negative, our normal negativity bias, when we go through a lot of negative experiences, particularly as children, will get really, really embedded in that implicit memory brain. So how do you deal with this? So in general, as you go through your day, try to enhance the positive experiences. So when you see something beautiful, take a few moments to really breathe it in. If you have young children or grandchildren, and they can be so difficult to deal with and really can cause us so much agitation because their needs are so great, but sometimes if we just take a few minutes to like smell them and breathe in that sensory information from young children, it's just such a wonderful thing. So take the time to let your brain encode positive information. It could be something very simply pleasurable like the shower, or when you wash the dishes, the feeling of the soap and the warm water on your hands can be pleasurable. So beginning to try to really make it a habit to notice these things, because as you're doing this, you're not improving your happiness just for that day, but you're actually helping your brain rewire to begin to expect more positive information. So I use a tool called butterfly tapping that some of you have done with me. And it's just a very simple exercise of giving yourself a bit of a self-hug and then doing some gentle butterfly tapping. So if a positive event happens to you during the course of the day, take a moment to really feel it, to recollect it, to bring it deeply into your brain and do a little bit of butterfly tapping. So those are some of my suggestions on enhancing the positive, is to really pause, notice it, and encode the positive in your brain. Now remember, we form memory based on what we're paying attention to. So if we're rushing through our day and we are anxious all the time and our mind is focused elsewhere and all around here, our mind is like paying attention to stuff that doesn't even exist, right? That's our projections about the future or our worries about the past or our ruminating. We're not encoding the moments that we are experiencing right now, which may actually be pleasurable. So enhancing the positive, that's the number one suggestion. Number two, cultivating positive emotions, very similar. And a tool for this could be a gratitude journal. Now, there is a lot of research on how gratitude journals can help you refocus on the positive and overall increase happiness. I also want to say, for people who feel very anxious or like they're in a really difficult point in their life or they feel sort of depressed, they may not actually feel grateful. And then when they're asked to write down a gratitude list, they feel guilty because they think, I have all these things to be grateful for and I don't feel it. So I want to put that out there because I do know that that impedes a lot of people. And if it's possible to just have a little bit more self-acceptance and be like, okay, right now I don't feel grateful, but I know that I am. I know I'm grateful for a roof over my head. I know I'm grateful for these family members who support me or a friend who supports me or whatever it is. It could be very simple things. I'm grateful for, my feet. I am grateful for my feet. They support me a lot. They're incredibly complicated and it's amazing the job that they do. So just something very, very simple. So keeping a gratitude journal, and if those yucky feelings come up around the gratitude, try to be okay with that and just do it from an intellectual point of view and see what happens over time. And again, all these tools are for you to try, see what works for you, see what helps. So Janet is saying she loves the butterfly tapping and she does it when she needs it. Terrific, terrific. Excellent. Excellent. So the last thing I'm going to say about rewiring the negativity bias. We have a lot of information in our society right now that is telling all of us to focus only on the positive, let go of all your negativity, just do affirmations, think positive, manifest abundance, all of this stuff, which I think can be very powerful. But it's important to avoid the spiritual bypassing. And spiritual bypassing is that thing of like, oh, I'm just going to shovel it all under the rug and I'm going to be positive and I'm going to smile. But it's really not changing anything. And so my third suggestion on this is to allow yourself to do the deep work. To do the deep work that is needed to heal, particularly if you grew up in a difficult childhood environment. So that deeply embedded implicit memory is not simply going to change by doing affirmations or a gratitude journal or the sort of surface things. My first suggestion, which is like really embodying the positive, is probably the best in terms of really helping it come into the body, the feelings of pleasure in the moment now. But healing that childhood stuff is incredibly important. So whether that work needs to be done with a therapist, with an online coach, with a good friend, however you want to approach that work, I feel that that work is needed. So for example, if we grow up in an environment where we feel like we have to take care of everybody else's emotions or else, right? I got to make sure that this one stays calm and doesn't get too angry. I have to make sure this one stays happy enough and doesn't get too depressed. And I'm always navigating the emotional landscape of my family system. And I see it as my job, right? So that's how I grow up. That's not going to go away as an adult until I do some deep work. And when I do the deep work and I really go back in and look at that and have empathy for myself as a child, I can then realize that was the best coping tool for that time. I developed a super wonderful coping tool for the environment I was in. But it's unfortunate I was in that environment, and I'm no longer in that environment now. So I no longer have to do that. And because, as we know, as adults, this is a Sisyphean task, right? It is impossible to keep everybody around us happy. So if we have this compulsive need to try to do that, we will never be happy ourselves. So that's some of the deeper work that I'm talking about. And so Nikki is chiming in, yes, acknowledge the negative emotions while not letting them rule your life. And Jackson, I'm so glad you're in the right place right now. That gives me a little bit of a chill that you are where you needed to hear this. I'm really pleased to hear that. And it's acknowledging the negative emotions, but it's also healing the old stuff. So let's see. I'll throw out some questions if you have any. Healing. Yes, you can't change the past. A comment from Barbara. Healing, question mark. You can't change the past. You can heal from it. I have worked with many, many, many people who have healed from it. I have healed myself. You can heal from your past. And healing is really a matter of developing self-compassion and understanding and allowing yourself. So I have so many videos on YouTube on this, but I do have a couple on how avoidance doesn't work. So if we avoid thinking about difficult things we've been through, it doesn't actually help. It just sort of stays there and, buzzes in the back of our brain and sort of gives us, kind of either feelings of dread or anxiety or low self-worth. So next week, actually, I am going to, I'm announcing this because I need to give myself a deadline. I'm going to announce a new workshop, a new program, online course program. So stay tuned. I think many of you know that I work with this concept of the 4 pillars of joy, the 4 pillars that help us bring joy into our lives. One of which, mindfulness meditation, because it helps us be mindful in the moment right now, which is where we experience joy. 2, transforming our core negative beliefs. It is so important to transform these beliefs, not simply replace them with with positive affirmations that might work for some people. But for most people that I know, it does not work for them. Really transforming those negative core beliefs. Deep self-knowledge and self-compassion, really having compassion for oneself. And there's a 4th, which has escaped my mind. So it is funny how when you're talking live, it's like, every now and then, whatever it was I planned to say just kind of flew out the window. So Tracy's asking for a Udemy class. I probably will not be doing a Udemy class, but I will be offering some online courses and programs more than I have right now. So I am going to be doing that. And where to start for healing the past. A lot of people are asking me with my YouTube stuff, a lot of people are asking me for questions about how to do this on a self-help basis. And some of it can be done on a self-help basis, but not for the really deep, painful stuff, particularly attachment wounds. I feel that attachment wounds need to be healed in attachment with another person. So support groups can be hugely helpful. Therapists, life coaches, pastors, ministers, if you have a religious bent, really beginning to heal in conjunction with other people, because particularly those things that we feel ashamed of or feelings of shame that might come up about something, very hard to heal shame on your own because you're stuck in it. You don't have any perspective. Receiving perspective and getting somebody else's view helps so much. So yeah, stay tuned because I'm going to share with you a program next week that for some of you might be something that really can help with some of this healing and transformation. So Dazzle Me Red, I'm going to have to come back to your question because I'm going to have to think about that one a little bit. Oh, Tracy, thank you. That's very sweet. That's very sweet. And Elaine saying, can't wait. Excellent. CBT exercises. So I have a video on how to stop catastrophizing. And catastrophizing is really the ultimate expression of this negativity bias. So watch that. I have some suggestions in there. And then I also have a video that, for those of you on YouTube, you've probably seen the cognitive behavioral therapy exercises video, but that also gives you some exercises. So I want to come back and healthy boundaries. Joanne, thank you. It's so nice to have people on my lives who are familiar with my work or have taken a prior workshop. So yes, the fourth pillar for having more joy in your life is healthy boundaries. And healthy boundaries also comes out of deep self-knowledge and transforming your negative core beliefs. So, and Nicoletta from Nairobi is a marriage and family therapist. Great, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm hoping this is helpful for you to bring to all the people you'll be helping in your career. And I want to come back because Dazzle Me's question has me, does this include unverified information or only actual experiences? No, Dazzle Me. So great question. Definitely it includes unverified information. It actually includes our internal fantasies. So let's say you have a negative experience and then that gets deeply encoded and you learn from it, and that's okay, right? So I step off the curb when I'm visiting London and the cars go in a different direction than they do here in the United States. So I'm looking the wrong way and I almost get hit and I get scared. Negative event that I learn from. It's good. It's really positive. However, we learn from every negative event, and when we have movies in our head projecting out into the future, so when we're catastrophizing problems in the future, our body is experiencing that like it's real. So we are encoding and learning from all these things we've made up in our heads. So yes, no, it doesn't have to be only actual experiences. And then it also, they're doing a bunch of research on infants and babies in terms of how they navigate the world and how they learn from the adults around them when something unusual happens. So they pick up on how the adult responds to new stimuli. And the child who is following that adult, right, totally attached to that adult, will encode that. So it also, and I'm really glad you brought this up and that I paused to think about your question. So it also includes when we're watching news, like watching too much, like it's good to stay informed. I all think we should be active citizens of this world and of our countries and be proactive in trying to make our societies a better place to live. And we need to exercise self-care and not watch the news, because the news is probably one of the best examples of how the negativity bias drives all of us. We pay way more attention to negative news. So I'm hoping this is helpful for you. I'm just going to review real quick. Enhance the positive. As you go through the rest of your day today, breathe it in. Anything, small things, a nice meal, warm shower, flowers, the sunshine. Breathe it in. Take the moment to encode the positive. Use the butterfly tapping if you like. So enhancing the positive. And then second, cultivating positive emotions. The gratitude journal concept. Give it a try. If you haven't tried it before, give it a try. If you have done it in the past, try it again. If you're feeling in one of those places where you really would like to help your brain focus on the positives of what's happening and sort of balance the scales a little here. We don't even have to go to being totally Pollyanna-ish. We just want to balance the scales. And then thirdly is doing the work you need to do to really heal some of the deeper wounds. So talk to you guys next week. Thank you. Thank you everybody for joining me.